Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The CDC no longer broadly recommends COVID vaccines. A federal judge gave the green light for the deployment of National Guard troops to Illinois, and the indirect talks between Hamas and Israel began today in Egypt. Okay, let's get into it. The government shutdown entered its sixth day today. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett told CNBC this morning that President Trump was hoping to end the shutdown with key Senate votes on reopening the government that were planned for today. But if not, Hassett said that he would guess that team in the Oval is going to start taking sharp measures. Yesterday, President Trump said that federal layoffs are taking place right now. But during the news briefing today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters that President Trump's comments were in reference to workers who were already furloughed.
First, President Trump told reporters yesterday that firings of federal employees are taking place right now. In which departments have people already been fired from their federal jobs due to the shutdown?
The president was referring to the hundreds of thousands of federal workers who have been furloughed as a result of this federal government shutdown, both here at the White House and across the entire federal government. At agencies across the board, there are federal workers who are staying home. Many of them work in the White House. You know them. Some of them sit just behind me at those desks. They are unable to show up to work right now because the Democrats chose to shut the government down. And so we're already, unfortunately, seeing the consequence of this. And then, of course, the Office of Management and Budget is continuing to work with agencies on who, unfortunately, is going to have to be laid off if this shutdown continues.
Several bills to reopen have failed so far, but the Senate is voting again today. Democrats want to renew Obamacare subsidies, while Republicans want to maintain current spending levels. While signing an executive order in the Oval Office today, President Trump said, "We are speaking with Democrats regarding the shutdown and that some good things could happen with health care." The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention no longer broadly recommends COVID-19 vaccination. Today, the CDC announced that each person should take a range of factors into account and consult with their doctor before receiving a shot. Jim O'Neill, the CDC's acting director, said in a statement, "Informed consent is back." CDC's 2022 blanket recommendation for perpetual COVID-19 boosters deterred healthcare providers from talking about the risks and benefits of vaccination for the individual patient or parent. That changes today. The new announcement came after the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which is the CDC's vaccine advisory panel, in September unanimously said that the CDC should change from its near universal recommendation to shared clinical decision making. The panel said that, in part, because its members said that data supporting vaccine effectiveness is weak. Retsev Levi, the chair of the panel's COVID-19 immunization work group, said during the meeting, at best, the additional protection provided by a seasonal booster is moderate and of short term. Members also said they were concerned about the side effects that the vaccine could cause, including myocarditis, which is a form of heart inflammation. For years, the CDC recommended that nearly everyone aged 6 months and older receive a COVID-19 vaccine annually. The indirect talks between Hamas and Israel began today in Egypt, which is one of the key mediators in the peace plan. The U.S. is represented by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law, former presidential advisor Jared Kushner. Israel is represented by Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Demir, while Hamas's delegation is led by Khalil al-Hayya. Hayya was one of the targets of a recent Israeli assassination attempt in Qatar. The attack in Qatar killed 5 Hamas members and 1 member of Qatar's security forces, but Hamas said that its senior official, Hayya, survived the strike. Qatar, which is another key mediator in the talks, is represented by its foreign minister. The talks came after Hamas's agreement on Friday to free all remaining hostages alive and dead in Gaza and to hand over Gaza governance to Palestinian technocrats. On Saturday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appeared in a television appearance over the weekend, and he described the moment as one of the most consequential in Israel's modern history. He said, "My brothers and sisters, citizens of Israel, we are on the verge of a very great achievement. It is not yet final. We are working on it diligently." Netanyahu hopes to announce the release of the remaining hostages in the coming days. He also hailed the ceasefire plan for showing that diplomatic and military pressure has pushed Hamas into freeing hostages in Gaza. Netanyahu also reiterated his demand that Hamas would be disarmed either by diplomatic means according to the Trump plan or militarily by us. Yesterday, President Trump urged both Israel and Hamas to move fast or risk seeing more bloodshed. President Trump wrote on Truth Social that there have been very positive discussions with Hamas. I'm asking everyone to move fast. Time is of the essence or massive bloodshed will follow, something that nobody wants to see. On the same day, Secretary of State Marco Rubio told NBC News that he believes it will take some time before we see any governance structure in Gaza that's not Hamas.
I would view it in two phases in terms of understanding how to break this out. The first piece of it, which was very clear from the letter and Hamas's response, is they have agreed to the president's hostage release framework. And what needs to happen now, and they acknowledge in the letter in their response, is there now needs to be meetings which are occurring even as I speak to you now, and hopefully will be finalized very quickly on the logistics of that. What that means is, who goes in to get them? Is it Red Cross? When do they show up, et cetera? What place are they going to be? And the conditions have to be created for that to happen. You can't have bombs going off and fighting going on in the middle of this exchange. So that's piece one. The second, and we want to see that happen as soon as possible. All 48 hostages, both living and deceased. And there's some need to be released. And there's some logistical challenges to that we'll have to work through. But that work is happening even as I speak to you this very moment. The second part of it, it's even harder, and that is the long-term piece. What happens after Israel pulls back to the yellow line and potentially beyond that as this thing develops? How do you create this Palestinian technocratic leadership that's not Hamas, that's not terrorists, and with the help of the international community? How do you disarm any sort of terrorist groups that are going to be building tunnels and conducting attacks against Israel? How do you get them to demobilize? All that work, that's going to be hard, but that's critical, because without that, you're not going to have lasting peace. You may get the hostages back, you may get a cessation of hostilities, but in the long term, it's going to happen all over again.
And on Saturday, President Trump said that Israel has agreed to an initial withdrawal line in Gaza as part of his plan to end the war. President Trump wrote, "After negotiations, Israel has agreed to the initial withdrawal line, which we have shown to and shared with Hamas. When Hamas confirms, the ceasefire will be immediately effective and the hostages and prisoner exchange will begin, and we will create the conditions for the next phase of withdrawal, which will bring us close to the end of this 3,000-year catastrophe." And today, a group that represents families of hostages in Gaza said that President Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for his unprecedented push for peace. They told the Nobel Committee that President Trump's plan to end the conflict and to free the hostages has given them hope that their nightmare could finally end. This year's Nobel Peace Prize recipient will be announced on Friday. Yesterday marked the U.S. Navy's 250th birthday. During an event celebrating the occasion, President Trump announced that the Pentagon had carried out an airstrike on Saturday against a vessel off the coast of Venezuela that was carrying illegal drugs.
In recent weeks, the Navy has supported our mission to blow the cartel terrorists the hell out of the water. You see that? And there are no boats in the water anymore. We can't find any. We're having a hard time finding them. But, it's a pretty tough thing we've been doing, but you have to think of it this way. Every one of those boats is responsible for the death of 25,000 American people and the destruction of families. So when you think of it that way, what we're doing is actually an act of kindness. But we did another one last night. Now we just can't find any. It's the old story. We're so good at it that there are no boats. In fact, even fishing boats, nobody wants to go into the water anymore. Sorry to tell you that. But we're stopping drugs coming into America, if that's okay. We're stopping drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before.
President Trump also announced that the United States will increase scrutiny of drug trafficking occurring by land. He said they're not coming by sea anymore, so we'll have to start looking about the land because they'll be forced to go by land. On the same day, War Secretary Pete Hegseth also said that the Pentagon has every authorization to carry out strikes against boats carrying narcotics off the coast of Venezuela.
Oh, we have every authorization needed. These are designated as foreign terrorist organizations. They're a threat to the homeland. They're a threat to the American people. They've been poisoning our people for far too long, and President Trump said no more. They're effectively designated just like Al-Qaeda, which if I saw Al-Qaeda in the conduct of doing something that was going to threaten and kill Americans, I had the right to do that in Iraq and Afghanistan. If you're in our hemisphere and you're in the Caribbean, if you're north of Venezuela and you want to traffic drugs to the United States, you are a legitimate target of the United States military. And in each one of these strikes, we know where they're coming from. We know who they work for. We know where they're going. We know what they're carrying. We know how many people are on that boat. And that's why these are legitimate, clean kills in pursuit of defending the homeland. And we hope it deters those foreign terrorist organizations from doing it, because the American people deserve to be defended.
During the celebration event, President Trump reflected on a quarter millennia of naval heroes, and he spent much of his speech reflecting on what the Navy has achieved in its 250 years. President Trump recalled Captain John Paul Jones, the naval hero, who, when told to surrender to a powerful British ship, famously refused, saying he hadn't even begun to fight. President Trump also recalled the War of 1812, and he shared the story of Captain James Lawrence, who, after being fatally wounded fighting the British, told his crew to never give up the ship and keep fighting to the very end. The phrase, "Don't give up the ship," has become one of the most famous in naval history, serving as an unofficial motto of the Navy. President Trump also looked back on key victories, from defeating Barbary pirates in the Mediterranean to outsmarting German submarines in World War II and winning major battles in the Pacific. President Trump said, in World War II, Admiral Bull Halsey's motto was hit hard, hit fast, hit often, and that is exactly what the sailors do. President Trump also honored 100-year-old Felix Mauricio, who is a World War II veteran who retired from the Navy in 1966. Mauricio enlisted at the age of 18, trained in Norfolk, and piloted amphibious landing vehicles during the D-Day invasion of Normandy, crossing the obstacle-filled water 6 times to deliver reinforcements. Mauricio later fought in the Battle of Iwo Jima in the Pacific. President Trump said that Mauricio's presence at the event, which marked his 100th birthday, stands as a living testament to the glory of the Navy. President Trump also referenced the Navy SEALs' role in the 2011 killing of Osama bin Laden.
And history will never forget that it was the SEALs who stormed the compound at Osama bin Laden and put a bullet in his head. Remember that? And please remember, I wrote about Osama bin Laden exactly 1 year ago, 1 year before he blew up the World Trade Center. And I said, you got to watch Osama bin Laden. And the fake news would never let me get away with that statement unless it was true. But I said 1 year before to Pete Hegseth, I said 1 year before, where's Pete? In the book, I wrote, whatever the title, I can't tell you. But I can tell you there's a page in there devoted to the fact that I saw somebody named Osama bin Laden, and I didn't like it, and you got to take care of him. They didn't do it. A year later, he blew up the World Trade Center, so we've got to take a little credit because nobody else is going to give it to me. You know the old story? They don't give you credit, just take it yourself. And it was the U.S. Navy that dumped his wretched corpse off the decks of the Carl Vinson to sink into the dark abyss.
During the event, President Trump also talked about the Ultimate Fighting Championship, or the UFC. He emphasized the importance of next year's national milestone. President Trump said that next year's UFC event will take place on June 14th. The event will be part of wider celebrations to mark the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. The UFC fight will be held on the south lawn of the White House grounds, and the date will coincide with President Trump's 80th birthday. President Trump is known in the mixed arts world as the combatant-in-chief, and he has been a regular attendee at UFC fights. On Saturday, a leaked internal dispatch revealed that Chicago cops were told to not respond after Border Patrol agents called for help, saying that they were surrounded and trapped after a ramming incident outside the city. Fox News reviewed the computer-aided dispatch message that was sent to Chicago police officers by their chief of patrol. The message directed officers not to respond to a Saturday morning ramming on the southwest side of the city. In that incident, an armed woman was shot and agents were boxed in and surrounded. Nearly a dozen people were later arrested. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, agents were on a routine patrol about 15 miles from the ICE processing center in Broadview when what it describes as domestic terrorists began throwing smoke, gas, rocks, and bottles. An ICE vehicle was hit, surrounded, and left behind as agents fled for safety. DHS said that the vehicle was heavily damaged, but in a statement on Sunday, the Chicago Police Department disputed the claims. The department said, to clarify misinformation currently circulating, CPD officers did in fact respond to the shooting scene involving federal authorities on Saturday to maintain public safety and traffic control. The Chicago Police Department also added that federal authorities are leading the investigation into the shooting and that officers were present to ensure safety. Later that afternoon, police also responded to a separate call involving 2 hit-and-run crashes affecting federal personnel. The department said that the Chicago Police Department will always respond to anyone who is being attacked or is under the threat of physical harm. But 2 senior Chicago police sources say that that's not true, and that the internal messages show a very different story from what the department claimed. One ranking source told Fox News that the Chicago Police Department statement is not true, pointing to legit dispatch audio. And a second ranking source told Fox News, "I've never been more embarrassed to be a former member of this department with the current leadership in place. I feel for the men and women left behind, forced to work under these cowards as their command channel." One of the sources also explained how to interpret the dispatch audio. They explained that initially they were going to meet a bit of a distance away from the location, obviously to give proper instructions. Then he got back on and told them not to go, that is, the lieutenant. He was obviously given instructions and changed what he initially said from "go there" to "do not go there." The source said that officers responded, but they had to leave because of the order. The source also said that the scene was chaotic and they were obviously blocked in. FBI Director Kash Patel also confirmed on Sunday that the FBI arrested 2 people who allegedly drove vehicles into federal officials in the same incident in Chicago. Patel also stressed that the FBI would pursue justice by saying, "Attack our law enforcement and this FBI will find you and bring you to justice." The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois said in court documents that Marimar Martinez and Anthony Ian Santos Ruiz were charged in federal court with using their vehicles to assault, impede, and interfere with the work of federal agents in Chicago. Meanwhile, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino also said in a post on X that trying to intimidate law enforcement will not slow us down. The mission will not stop. The ICE facility in Broadview has become a flashpoint for protests. On Friday, the facility witnessed more than a dozen protesters being arrested in the streets near the facility. On Sunday, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who has been critical of the Trump administration's immigration enforcement operations in Chicago, said that the White House will be deploying 300 National Guard members to Illinois. He added that the National Guard is being sourced from Texas. But Pritzker said in a statement, "No officials from the federal government called me directly to discuss or coordinate." And today, the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration in a bid to halt the federal government from deploying National Guard troops to Chicago. But a federal judge declined to block the deployment of National Guard troops to Illinois. The judge's ruling allows the deployment to move ahead for now. Also today, Brandon Johnson, Chicago's mayor, just declared the city an ICE-free zone in an attempt to bar federal agents from using city property for their investigations into illegal immigrants. In response, Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin called the move reckless and dangerous, saying that it puts the ICE agents and the public at risk while they're working without pay during the shutdown. The leading Democratic candidate in the New York City mayoral race, current city council member Zohran Mamdani, has recently returned to the spotlight for his education reform proposals. He publicly stated, if elected, he would phase out New York City's gifted and talented programs in elementary schools. He argued that the program exacerbates racial segregation in schools. This declaration immediately sparked an uproar. According to his plan, gifted students currently enrolled in specialized classes may continue their studies. However, starting next fall, kindergartens will no longer offer gifted programs. Over the next few years, these specialized classes would be phased out across all elementary schools in the city. However, this stance has struck a nerve with many parents. New York's gifted and talented programs have long been highly sought after by immigrant families, particularly those of Asian descent, and they remain a key reason why many parents choose to stay within the public school system. A survey by the New York City Department of Education indicates that one reason approximately 40% of parents consider transferring their children out of public schools is their desire for their children to receive a more rigorous curriculum. In contrast, another Democratic candidate, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, has explicitly opposed eliminating gifted programs. He stated bluntly, parents have made it abundantly clear that they want more gifted and talented programs, not fewer. And Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa proposed expanding gifted programs, and he accused Mamdani's stance of shortchanging New York's children. And notably, Mamdani has shifted his stance on another education issue. While he previously questioned the fairness of the specialized high school admissions test, the SHSAT, he now advocates retaining the exam. This reversal is widely seen as a response to parental pressure and a strategic move to court moderate voters during the election. Beyond education, Mamdani's statement on public safety issues have also drawn attention. He has repeatedly criticized the management practices of the New York Police Department, advocating for the establishment of a community safety department to separate non-criminal matters from police responsibilities, allowing the department to focus on core law enforcement duties. Simultaneously, he has proposed strengthening citizen oversight mechanisms, granting independent complaints boards a greater authority over police disciplinary actions, which is a proposal that is strongly opposed by New York law enforcement. France's newly appointed Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu announced his cabinet members on Sunday night, then he resigned just hours later on Monday morning. French President Emmanuel Macron has accepted the resignation. This brings the Lecornu government's tenure to less than 12 hours, making it one of the shortest-lived cabinets in French history. Following the news, financial markets reacted immediately. France's main stock market, the CAC 40, fell more than 2% in early trading on Monday, while the euro also dropped sharply. The rapid collapse of Lecornu's government stemmed directly from the new cabinet lineup failing to secure support. It faced unanimous criticism from both ruling and opposition parties, raising doubts about the government's sustainability and prompting preparations for a no-confidence vote. The media noted that many ministers were either holdovers from the previous administration or had previously held senior positions, with 11 ministers returning to their former posts. French right-wing leader Marine Le Pen described the cabinet lineup as pathetic. Jordan Bardella, the leader of the National Party, has called on Macron to dissolve Parliament. Olivier Faure, the leader of the Socialist Party, which is the main left-wing opposition party, explicitly stated his party would vote against the new government. And this lineup has even drawn criticism or warnings from some of Macron's political allies. Agnes Pannier-Runacher, who had just been reappointed as ecology minister on October 5th, said in a post on X that France cannot move forward without reaching out to those who, despite our differences, share the same demand, that of serving France and the French people. Lecornu was Macron's fifth prime minister since his re-election in 2022. His abrupt resignation has plunged Macron into a serious political impasse. Lecornu was tasked with streamlining budgets and curbing France's fiscal deficit. With the collapse of the current government, this crucial fiscal reform may once again come to a standstill. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.